just because what I wanted to communicate that is not boasting at all. I have a PhD from Georgetown. I have an MBA post-Air Force from Baylor. Neither of those things got me employed, believe it or not. My transition was very, very difficult. And it was actually the consulting and the office work that was the transition to art. Because at age 55, I finally discovered what I wanted to do when I grew up, and it involved hot metal, fire, and hammers. And yes, very fun. So wait. Next slide. Okay. So it turns out I thought I had used up my GI Bill. It turns out I had a little bit left. And for somewhere in the back recesses of my mind, jewelry seemed cool, welding seemed cool. I don't know why. And I started at the Austin Community College, actually has one of the top blacksmithing programs in the country, and a great art metals program, which is to say making sculpture out of steel. So on the left, that's this is something we use to cut our sheet. All those tools behind there are all forging tools. We'll talk about that. This is MIG welding. I'm working on a frame that, it's a piece I'm keeping. It's a piece, framing a piece of driftwood I found up in Lake Huron, my brother's cabin. So forging, blacksmithing 101 is heating up a piece of iron in the forge here, and we have 3 of them at ACC. And by the way, the woman who built the forges and maintains them, she essentially rebuilds them every year. She knows every piece of equipment. She was my metalsmithing teacher. Her dad was a Vietnam veteran, and she has immediate family members who are Coast Guard and other branches. Have you talked to her? Yes, she's game. She's game. And her artwork, I mean, I'm embarrassed to be talking as a sculptor compared to the work she does. And she's very humble about it. This is a power hammer. Austin Community College has 5 power hammers, which is almost unheard of. We use them to forge items, including tools. So I do know how to make tools using the forge. And sometimes if you're working on a unique project, you need to make your own tool for it. Right? And there's an apocryphal story about the fact that the king calls in all the people who built his beautiful, beautiful kingdom. And the carpenters and the people who made the tapestries and the people the stonemasons. And in comes the blacksmith who says, and none of you would have tools without me. Copper is something that we do. I can't call myself a coppersmith. But I do really enjoy what's called sinking and raising copper. And so this pot started round sheet of copper. This crimping process is one way we used to raise it. And about 4,365,999 hammer strikes later, you have something like that. It took weeks and weeks to raise that. But it was fun. And then while I was working on the larger sculpture, I got interested in jewelry because I thought, what can understanding jewelry and how softer metals move and soldering jewelry help me with how to work larger metal? So I do make jewelry. Cynthia wanted me to make sure that I brought some, but frankly, I can sell a necklace for $150, but I have a hard time selling a sculpture for $250. I don't know. It takes up more space, I guess. I don't know. But the metal sells pretty quickly, or the jewelry sells pretty quickly. There is an item that I like to use in jewelry, and that is the porcupine quill. Porcupine is kind of a spirit animal of mine. And my website is porcupinepros.com. It's very light. I can make you some porcupine quill earrings that double as a weapon, and the TSA won't catch them. So yeah, you can defend yourself with those. But in jewelry, you're working with minimums that are fractions of a millimeter. So you might want to run your file once, and then you check it, and once, and then you check it. In forging, you're working at about if you're within about 1/8 of an inch, you're good. So in order to make jewelry, one skill that you use to make jewelry is carving wax. And then you melt the wax. It's called lost wax casting. You create a shape in wax. Then you, it's called spruing it up. You basically set it in plaster. And you melt away, you cook away the wax on the inside, and now you have a shape. And you pour metal in there, and that's how you cast anything from statues to jewelry. Well, it turns out that carving this wax, it's hard wax to carve. At some point I thought, well, let me try doing this with antler or whatever. So antler is actually a hardness somewhere in between wax and metal. So it's very fun to work with. This is a deer antler ring with inlaid jet and turquoise. This is deer antler with inlaid turquoise. This is antler, and I did a lost wax casting of this little pine tree and dangled that little sterling silver pine tree in there. So I had on a ring similar to this one going into this store that had all this bison stuff. And the proprietor said, "Can you carve that ring in bison horn?" And that's what this is, North American bison, and I mounted a white sapphire in there. And it is the stinkiest stuff. Yeah, you have a dog? Anybody have a dog? If your dog chews on like those hooves that you can get at the pet store, and after a while you're like, it smells like a barnyard in there. That's exactly what that smells like. So I'm not allowed to work on it indoors unless I'm by myself. Even outdoors at the house, I get comments about people evacuate for a city block because this stuff is so stinky. But it polishes up beautifully. And after the panel, I am going to be set up in the hallway, and I have some antler points, and I have some bone beads, and I will show you, let you do hands-on, show you how to inlay turquoise or jet into a piece of antler, and we can make you a little antler tip necklace as a souvenir of your day, and you can see how that's done, and those are ready to go. So I'll be hanging out all day doing that. My military experience can't help but infiltrate what I do because I was in the Air Force for 25 years. I'm completely brainwashed. I joined the Civil Air Patrol when I was 13. I was in ROTC at University of Michigan from 1980 to 84. And then I was in the Air Force for 25 years. I'm gone. There's nothing left in my brain. I'm completely brainwashed. But I did serve in the closet my entire career. So at age, in 1985, at age 23, I realized I wasn't like most people. And then I lived with this for the next 24 years because I was already in uniform. And having to live under that shaped me in ways that we would have to go out and drink many, many beers to talk about. So this was one of my first lectures. It's called Don't Ask, Don't Tell. And basically the point is when you have an organization and you separate members of the organization, you say you can't serve. You have taken away from the whole. And so I've got a couple of Don't Ask, Don't Tell sculptures that represent that. The other thing that's key here, these are, has anybody heard the term glass float or Japanese glass float? Yes, head bobs, maybe. In India, they do this thing where they go, yeah. Anyway, so the glass floats, you see some there are representative for me because they have this function. They float fishing nets. They're made out of glass. So they take sand, they turn it into glass, they shape this into this fishing float. If the fishing float were to break while it's doing its job, floating a fishing net, the glass would fall to the bottom of the ocean, once again become sand, which is what it was in the first place. It might function broken, it might not. But this to me is representative in all of my work of humanity. As human beings, we are shaped, we are formed, we go through trials and tribulations. Some of them hurt us but don't break us, and some of them break us completely. So a big question for the artist is the creative process. Who in here considers themselves a creative person? Creative, okay. My buddy Marcy is a French horn player, so she's creative. Okay, we have more creatives in here. So how many people in the room, let me ask this question. How many of you can think in 3 dimensions? Yeah. So I was fairly old when I found out that no, not everybody can think in 3 dimensions. So I kind of found this out when I was welding, and my welding class I would take with code welding guys, right? And I'd say, I can't imagine welding straight lines all day. And they'd say, I can't imagine coming up with that stuff that you guys do in metal for artwork. Sometimes, as with this piece here, so this piece is called Nestled. It stands about yay tall, and this is post oaked, and this is a remnant from a guy who made furniture out of this stuff that he salvaged. This end and this end were joined, and so this was about an 8-foot board. And I asked him, saw it, I know exactly what I'm going to do with it, saw it right there, because I knew I wanted to flip the 2 ends and create this shape and fill it. So I cut a stencil on hardboard and used a plasma cutter to create this shape in the middle out of steel, and created a base out of steel. So I knew, as soon as I saw that piece of wood, I knew what I wanted to do with it. I bought these other 2 pieces of wood. I thought I was going to cut this piece of wood and do something similar. And when I laid these pieces of wood like that, I just saw this woman just sort of luxuriating and wanting to get out of this piece of wood. So I let her out. And so this is called Shape of a Woman, and which you can see at that point. So I had my own idea, but the wood told me what it wanted me to do with it. The same thing happened with this piece here. This piece is sold now to a collector in Washington, D.C., thanks to Anne-Marie. And I had this piece of wood. This was a single piece of wood. And I knew I wanted to do something with it, but I did not know what. So I took it to the shop, and I set it on the welding table. And almost as soon as I set it down, it told me what it wanted me to do. So what this piece represents, it's called conformity. And I had to do some stuff with the saw to fit that piece of wood that's organic and beautiful and curvy into a rectangle. So again, I've incorporated my float. So you can see this float trying to bust out of there. It just is not comfortable conforming to this rectangle. So it's called conformity, and this is representative of both my own situation, but also being in the military, where we take people and we just sort of cram them into some kind of conformity. And we have to realize that when we do that, there is a loss of something. So that's what that represents. I can't judge what that loss might be, but we have to concur that there is going to be a loss of individuality, a loss of perhaps visionary thinking, a loss of potential that happens when we squeeze people into shapes that they might not be ready for. This piece, my very first show, was a VA show. I was honored to get Best in Show on that piece, and it's hanging down at the end of the gallery there. It's read from left to right. Starts with coming into the military, shiny and new and ready to rock and roll. You join the military, get a little beat up. Maybe over the course of time, you get a lot beat up. There's a lot of symbolism in that piece. It uses ammo brass in the background and an ammo box for parts of the panels. This is PTSD 1. This piece is called PTSD 2. And my girlfriend, Mandy, is up here filming dutifully. She's a combat veteran. She trained as a welder, and they sent her to Iraq and put her behind the 50 cal. So she's a gunner in Iraq. And between what she experiences in her nightmares, and another friend of mine who was a flight test engineer came and was deployed in Afghanistan. She got blown into a ditch by a mortar round. She got shot at quite a bit. came this sculpture. And this is a copper sleeve, a shaped copper sleeve, and I forged this skeleton hand. You can see the skeleton hand is holding my representation of humanity, and that is a lost cast wax sculpture of a person. So that one is called PTSD2 Bodies. Next slide, please. Thank you. Oh, wait, back, wait. Oh. There we go. Okay. I am so proud to say that this was my first commission, and the friends who commissioned this piece are in the room. Does anybody care to guess what this is? It's about that tall. So my dear friends, Marcy and Neil, who are here, they're an Air Force and Marine Corps couple. They were decorating, and they said, we haven't been able to find this. Here are some pictures of the other artwork and the rest of the theme for this room. And can you make us something? And I said, sure. So I took the shapes that were in a frame. I took the color, that's a tile. And this here is a Japanese coin. And I think in my head, it went really well. Did it go really well with the decor? 2 thumbs up with the decor. It's a toilet paper holder. So this is my humility check for the rest of my life, that my very first medal commission was a toilet paper holder for my dear friends. And I'm very proud to say that. I'm very proud of that fact. I've done a few commissions. This one I did for friends who said, I want something for that window. So this uses colors that's in this really beautiful rug from Morocco that my friends have in their living room. Barb is a huge cyclist, and she has one of, those old bicycles that have a tire this big, and you sit on them, those old-fashioned ones. She has one of those hanging from her ceiling, and so these 2 circles represent the cycling. The squares come from another sculpture she has in the room. So people come over and they just say, how did you find that? It fits perfectly. So yes, it fits perfectly. This one was for a friend of mine who is a retired Air Force pilot and now a contractor pilot. And she showed me, we walked around via video, her room, and I knew her a little bit of her history. She's an Air Force Academy graduate. At the Air Force Academy, as my friend Christina, who is a student of mine at the Air Force Academy, will attest, as freshmen, they have to walk those strips of white marble. And I don't know what sick bastard thought that up, but these things have to be so slippery in Colorado ice and snow. How do you survive? How are there not more broken legs? I don't know. Anyway, it proved to be very tricky to go get the right kind of marble in the right size, and this is 1/2 the dimension of those. These are pieces of aluminum. They're in the shape of a cross-section of a wing. I had to learn new techniques to work with it, to texture it, and you have to anneal this to move it, meaning you need to heat it to the right temperature. You have to know how to get the right temperature. You can repeatedly anneal and heat, but it's extremely brittle. And so I had to play with the metal quite a bit before I got to that point. But I'm very proud of that. She loved it. I feel like it's a pretty neat representation. It's 21 inches tall, I think, is about how big it is. And I have some others out there. But so you'll see some pieces out in the gallery. I think I have 3 pieces out there. And again, I'll be doing the demo of the inlay and stuff. Do you have any questions? I have one more thing to talk about, but anybody have any questions? I'm sort of me. My friends knew they're going to give her a microphone. She's never going to finish in 15 minutes. Go ahead, Tan. I cannot do what you do, which is those beautiful oil paints. I can sketch. That's about it. Any other questions? Yes, Cynthia. you know what? What do you like better, vanilla or chocolate? I have no idea. Somewhere deep inside, now I realized when I started working with metal, I'm like, I've been working with metal since college, but I would pick it up and I would put it down. I would push it and I would let it come up. I would squat with it and I would. So I'd been working on it since 1983. Is that why I like metal? Was that why I liked metal? I don't know. It just always, I would see jewelry displayed and I'd think, how cool to know how to make that. And people would mention welding and I'd think, how cool to know how to do that. And I think it was because, I had access to this program and I could take one class at the community college and see if I connected. I took one class and I was hooked. Probably everybody has that story. One painting class, one class in carving birds, one class in volleyball, one class in French horn, and you're hooked. Tuba. my son's here, Zach, daughter, Kennedy, girlfriend, Manny. Zach tried, the day he was going to pick an instrument in middle school, he tried all the stuff. He tried the boom boom stuff and the blow it on that stuff. And they said, we recommend tuba or French horn. And it was like, oh, please pick French horn, please pick French. I think I want to try tuba. And here we are. Several sousaphones and tubas later. I'm very proud of Zach for that. Are we done? I think we're done. We have to move into the panel.
Hello. We have to move to the panel.
Okay.
But before we do that, I want to thank you, Edie, for your generosity and your family coming out to the DC area. And, they are a lot of fun. So not only is their art beautiful, but if you want to have a good conversation about pretty much anything you can imagine, catch the kids or Mandy and Edie, and you're sure to have a laugh or two. So thank you, everyone, for coming and listening to Edie. She will be back in August.
Yes.
And so thank you so much. We'll see you then.
Thank you.
We're just going to take a minute to, to transition to get the panel to come up. And right after we do that, we're going to have Matthew Gill, who some of you know as Max, who sang the opening for Star Spangled Banner for the exhibit, is going to sing a song for us, and then we're going to move right into the panel. So give us 1 minute, please. So Edie, since you're up here, you might be doing a duet with Matthew.
I would not do that beforehand.
So before we start the panel, Matthew's going to sing a song for us. We have play button. Michael sang for us in May, and we were like, you got to come back and sing something else for us in June, and in July and August. So I don't know that he knew about July and August yet, but you do now. So any words before you get started?
No, I just wanted to say good afternoon. And the song that I'm going to sing, it represents a lot of things, but the main thing it represents as far as this venue is that a lot of the people who do art, who they are is reflected in their art. A lot of situations that they can't say is reflected in the way they paint or they make ceramics or what have you. So this song is about, regardless of what you may see from the outside, what I do in my art really reflects who I am, because this is me. I'm not a stranger to the dark. Hide away, they say, it's been no more from broken hearts. I'm gonna be the change, all my scars. Let's say, when the sharpest one's gonna cut you down, he's gonna send his love, gonna drown him out. I am brave, I am bruised, I am whom I'm meant to be. This is me. Look out, 'cause here I come. Yeah, let me start over. No, Anne Marie, put this on the music. I can sing louder. I just don't want to go to. Oh, really? Okay. That's my manager and my wife, Adrian, who's also an artist. This mic is really live. Yeah.
You want the mic?
I want the mic on this one.
We're going to find a microphone. Testing.
There we go. There we go.
Ready?
I am not a stranger to the dark. Hide away, they say, we don't want your broken parts. I've learned to be ashamed of all my scars. Run away, they say, no one will love you as you are, but won't let them break you down to dust. I know that there's a place for us, for we are glorious. When the sharpest words want to cut you down, I'm gonna send the flood, gonna drown him out. I am brave, I am bruised, I am whom I'm meant to be. This is me. Look out, 'cause here I come. And I'm marching on to the beat I drum. I'm not scared to be free. I make no apologies. This is me. This is me. Whoa, whoa, oh, oh. I'm Another round of bullet hits my skin. Go far away, but today I won't let that shame sink in. We are bursting through the barricade, reaching for the sun. We are glorious, yeah, that's what we become. I won't let them break me down to dust. I know that there's a place for us. Oh, we are glorious. When the sharpest words wanna cut you down, I'm gonna send the flood, gonna drown them out. I am brave, I am bruised, I am who I'm meant to be. This is me. Look out, 'cause here I come. And I'm marching on the beat I drum. I'm not scared to be seen. I make no apologies. This is me. Oh, this is me. Oh, oh, this is me. And I know I am worthy of your love. There's nothing I'm not worthy of. Yes, this is me. I am brave, I am bruised, I am whom I'm meant to be. This is me. Look out, 'cause here I come. Marching on, marching on. Yeah, this is me. And I know that I'm worthy of your love. There's nothing I'm not worthy of. Yeah, this is me. Thank you.
Overcoming the challenges of technology. It was phenomenal with the problems with technology, but it was perfect because of you. Thank you, Matthew, so much.
Thank you. Thank you.
So we have the panel that will start in a minute. So if I can have, maybe I could do this like a announcer for, no, I can't, like a baseball game or something. You can do it. Here you go.
Is this one working? Hey, this one works. So we need Annette Polan, if she's in the house, to come to the, and Captain Moira McGuire, Ms. Edith Disler, and Lewis Howard. Is Lewis Howard in the house? And of course, Marie Halterman. Well, first of all, I'm going to introduce myself. I'm Cynthia Scott, and I am so proud to be a founding member of Uniting Us, which is the organization that has put this all together. Oh, and I didn't introduce you. Well, I'm going to introduce everybody here. First of all, Uniting Us, I am super proud. I became a member just a year ago when I happened upon Anne Marie and her gang of warrior artists. And one thing I just want to point out is that, in my opinion, the American public at large has a lot to learn from the American military community with our resilience and the term post-traumatic growth. And you've heard about the concept, but here we see evidence of it. And arts is one way is one way of healing. And so this is what we're going to talk about today. So let me start with Annette Polan. She is Professor Emeritus at Corcoran, from the Corcoran School of Art and Design at George Washington. She's also, George Washington University, rather. She is also the curator and creator of Faces of the Fallen, which was a huge success. Everybody was aware of it. It was early on in 2000 after we'd gone into Iraq. And I think it was about 2,000 fallen at that time, roughly. It was only 1,000 at that point. Anyway, about 1,000 portraits by about almost 1,000 artists. Thank you. Thank you for getting it straight. But it was a huge, huge undertaking. It was tremendously successful here at the Women's Memorial, and later on I got to see it over at the Pentagon where I'd been mobilized. So, and she's also part of the Arts and Embassies program, and I believe she has one of her portraits at the National Portrait Gallery. And she put together this exhibit that you see this summer with. She helped us make sense of over 180 art submissions that are currently on display here at the Military Women's Memorial. It was an amazing undertaking, and I'm so glad to have had the chance to work with her. And then Captain Moira McGuire. I got to meet her really just a year ago as I was getting involved with Uniting Us. I didn't know about the arts and healing capacity, that this was such an important tool in terms of wellness. And she is a nurse officer and division chief of Integrative Health and Wellness. She's the chief of arts in the health program at Walter Reed, which is indeed the National Military Medical Center. So it's where the active, it's the core, it's the place for active duty and the military family. And that's where the arts and health program has grown and expanded. Also with the help of Sarah Moore, who is a dance movement therapist. She is with the community arts and health. She's a specialist with community arts and health. And she also runs the monthly arts and health committee, of which I've had the privilege to become a member of. So I've been learning a lot about this concept of arts and health and that spectrum. Edith Disler is a Uniting Us artist who you've all just had the privilege to hear from, a welder and an artist, and a 3D and visionary thinker, which I want to talk to you more about. So yeah, really appreciate you making the trip from Texas to come here to offer your impressions about the spectrum of arts and health. And finally, Lewis Howard is an author and he's got 2 books available for sale. And I've already purchased 2 of them because I have a grandson that will be wanting to read these. So Lewis is he's an Army veteran. Yay. He's also now a Uniting Us member. We discovered, Anne-Marie helped discover him right here at Arlington National Cemetery.
Kathleen
he is in the
did.
security forces here at Arlington Cemetery.
Kathleen, thank you.
Kathleen, thank you. And really not last but not at all least, Anne-Marie Halterman will be running this panel discussion. She's an Air Force veteran. She is an inspiration. She is a uniter, and she is an empowerer. That's her effect on me and on so many other people. And
Thank you, Cynthia.
the driving force with Uniting Us. So, without further ado.
Thank you. Thanks, Cynthia. All right, so I learned in the Air Force how to tell time, and we have 31 minutes, but right now probably 30 and 30 seconds. So we're going to make this really fast. Not really. We're going to give this time. This is important. Thank you for being with us here today. We've got 5 of the most diverse, broad, intelligent brainiacs sitting up here. And not only are they brainiacs, but they have the emotion and that they can share that through their art and through their language with us. And so what we're going to talk today about is the spectrum of the arts. Everything from the medical environment, where you have creative arts therapy, which Sarah's going to be our expert on that, and all the way down to, okay, I do art at home. Me personally, no one else would think it was art, but that hobby craft that you do by yourself, all the way to communities and professionally as well. So what I would like to do just before we get into the questions is if each of you would take 2 minutes to say, this is who I am. And so when you're answering and discussing, people understand what your perspective is as we make our way through. Sarah, we'll start with you.
All All right. Okay. So, hi everyone. My name is Sarah Moore. I am a dance movement therapist and a psychotherapist. I work at Walter Reed. So, my background in the arts is, I guess, starts generationally. I come from 4 generations of military service, but also many, many generations of artists. And that started with, my grandfather. He was in the military, in the Army, and he was also a stained glass artist. And then my dad was in the Air Force, and he is also a clarinetist with the Georgia Philharmonic. And that trickled down to me. I actually wouldn't exist if it weren't for the arts. My parents met in middle school marching band in the clarinet section. So I owe my life quite literally to the arts. And, in high school, I got to go to the Masters Academy of Fine Arts where I, got to take lots of fun classes. I think you were mentioning, like, you get to dabble a little bit in drama and visual art and music and writing. But dance has always been my number one. And I started dancing when I was 3 and danced in ballet, like, through adulthood into adulthood. And then I shifted to creative arts therapies and got my master's in psychotherapy and dance movement therapy. So that's where I'm at now. I'm going to pass it over to you.
We're going to play past the mic. I'm Dr. Edith Disler. My PhD has nothing to do with art. My family's creative streaks were language. I thought I came from 4 generations of ministers. I recently found out I come from a whole lot more than 4 generations of ministers, which is why I'm such a hellion, I guess. So we have a word side of the family and a music side of the family. My mom and dad were both musicians. My brother's a musician. And somehow I ended up playing with fire and metal. I did 25 years in the Air Force, and I was variously on missile crew, Air Force Academy instructor, speechwriter, arms control inspector. It was all, the first 21 years were fun, the last 4 not so much. But I'm very honored to have been invited here today just as a practicing artist who's benefiting from art, emotionally and psychologically and mentally.
I'm Annette Polan. I'm a maker. I specialize in portrait painting, and I always think of portraiture as a sign from the past to the future that someone, this person, he or she, was here and his or her life mattered. So I think of myself as a painter of biographies, someone who tells stories. But I'm also an educator. I spent my entire adult life teaching art to emerging artists. And I attribute a lot of my skills and courage and risk-taking to lessons I learned from my students at the Corcoran. They were fearless. You say, do this, and they do it. So I thought, well, if they can do it, I can do it. But really, I had very little contact with the military, except for my father, who was a proud captain in the Army in World War II. A survivor of Battle of the Bulge. And, but other than my father, very few people in the military until Faces of the Fallen, which I started after my mother died. And I opened the post one day, well, I can tell this story later, but and overwhelmed by the creative, intelligent, caring people I've met since 2004 when Faces of the Fallen opened, who have proudly served in the military.
So I'm Moira McGuire, and I always start everything by stating that what I'm going to say today are my personal opinions only, and they do not reflect the views or perspectives of the Department of Defense or Walter Reed National Military Medical Center. Thank you. I try to behave. I really do. It's hard. So I'm a nurse officer. I actually will be completing 29 years in August, so one more year to retirement. I cannot wait. I am the daughter of a Marine who actually used his GI Bill after, well, he served in World War II and then Korea, and then went to William and Mary and studied voice. So he was an opera singer and then taught voice at Catholic University for 45 years. That's where he met my mother, who her degrees at that time were in speech and drama. She's also a painter and a pianist. And then I took ballet, and of course we had to take Irish dancing. So my entire life, until I put on my newest uniform, of course, going through Catholic schools, I always had a uniform, but my uniformed service uniform, I think, was the first time that I really started to understand that people had an interesting view of creativity and expression, and it wasn't always a very positive one. They would often, in the exact same sentence, elevate it and denigrate it. And I'd be like, that was interesting. And so a lot of my work at Walter Reed, I actually stood up the Sea Services Warrior Clinic before we were a National Naval Medical Center. So I did warrior care for 4 years. A lot of my efforts have been towards incorporating these activities, not just in the presence of, wounds and illness and injury, but to actually prevent those things as well and just enhance our resiliency. So I think we are at a new place at Walter Reed, which is very exciting. And I have been impressed with Anne-Marie the minute I met her. And so I'm looking forward to doing more with her in my retirement next year. Wink, wink.
You got, my name is Lewis Howard. I'm a U.S. veteran, 6 years. Just want to give you a brief introduction on how I came about to write my story. One day I was sitting at home in Seattle, and I go, hey, Corey, which is my younger son. At the time he was 16. I was like, I got an idea without taking time away from the family. He was like, what's that, Dad? I go, I'm gonna write a book. He was like, yeah, right, Dad. You're gonna write a book, but are you gonna really finish it? So I went ahead and I sat back and I thought about it, and I go, I'm gonna finish that book. I'm gonna finish. So over a period of time, I was a over at Joint Base Lewis McCord. Every day for 2 years, I skipped lunch and I would write. Okay, well, what's gonna be funny to these kids? Like, what kind of characters am I gonna put in there? So I said, okay, well, we'll name the main character Alex, which is my middle name, my father's name, and my son's middle name. So it's actually Alexander, but Alex for short. Great way to do it. So if any of you have kids and you say, no, don't do that, and they just do it anyway, that's the main character's characteristics for the book. I said, okay, well, I got the first one, let's another character. So I was like, okay, how about Sally? She wears football pads with a blue dress every day, and she can run over any guy. I said, oh, that sounds funny. So I added the character to the book. The third character is Eric. Eric is one of those kids that love to ride bikes, skateboards, and every time he wants to show off and try to do a trick, he ends up wrecking. Well, you know, sometimes that does happen. So in the next book, the of Alex, Lemonade Wars, there's a bully in there. Alex and his friends meet a bully, and the bully's trying to stop them from selling lemonade. So in order for you guys to figure out what the story's actually like, you would have to read. I wish I could tell you, but I could stay up here all day and just sit here and tell you about the books. The thing about writing is it gives you the freedom to do about whatever you want to do, and there's no limitations. So for me, I look at it as today's children. They got a timeline. Do this, do this, do this, do this. They're not given the chance to actually have their imagination to develop. So that's my inspiration for writing the book. For those of you who find it very interesting, I would recommend it. So that's all I have.
So I think y'all did great because you fed in some things that I was already going to ask you. But Alex, your mom and dad are here, right? And your aunt and your wife? Oh, girlfriend. And so when I first met Alex, he talked to me about how his mom would have him draw at the kitchen table. Is this true?
Yeah, she one day when I was younger, she would say, "Oh," I said, "Mom, you do that?" She's like, "Yeah, let me show you how to do it."
So there you go. That was your early beginning. So it's great to have her today here for your first official book signing. So thank you for joining us. And I also see some of your colleagues standing in the back. I got a little nervous when I thought maybe they were here for Annette or someone. But thank you, gentlemen, and the staff at Arlington National Cemetery for keeping us all safe. So as we kind of pick up, and I know we're way behind schedule, but there's some really important things that I'd like to talk about. And the first, I think the best way to approach it is, Moira, if you could just talk a few minutes about the concept of arts and medicine, and then creative arts therapy with Sarah, and how that is different than maybe in the community, doing art in the community with a nonprofit like Uniting Us or others, or by an individual by themselves versus being a professional like Annette, who has, not only taught, but inspired so many people through the years, as well as us here at Uniting Us. So can you start that, and then we'll kind of pass the microphones around.
I loved Edie's question earlier, right? This idea of how many creatives are in the audience, right? Like how many artists do we have here today? Can you guys show me? Right? Yeah, beautiful. Yes. Because we're all a work of art. We are all creative, and it's part of the human experience, and it's part of what makes us unique. And there are people who choose to take these activities to other levels, like to become professional artists. And I think even in my own upbringing, because I grew up in that environment, there was definitely this sense of, oh, well, this is what an artist looks like. You have to be able to, draw a picture or paint. Like all of the artwork in our house was my mom's paintings, right? Or I have to be able to sing like my dad, or I have to do all these other things. And those are lovely, but that's a different, right, pursuit versus just acknowledging that we are creative people who need to express. And it's what makes us healthy, right? It's what creates that balance in our lives. Because at the end of the day, that's what health is, right? Health is the presence of balance. You know it when you see it, you can feel it. And so, arts and medicine is taking some of these activities into a medical center and using them specifically sometimes to address illness or injury. When we started this program, not quite 2 years ago, so we actually got authorization to start it in 2019. We hired our first 2 people in 2020, right before the pandemic. So it's been a very interesting time. But we intentionally named it Arts in Health because the goal is improved health everywhere you look, right? So that can happen even if you're just coming to pick up, to get your blood work done, or you're coming to pick up meds. You don't have to, be seen for a specific injury or illness. It's something that benefits people always and all the time. And there's also what they call arts in healthcare, and that could be in a healthcare setting. But Sarah will talk a little bit. I mean, she's in the community, right? Sometimes the community is in the waiting room, hallway, or in the garden, or in the cafeteria, or at Uniformed Services University, which is right on campus. So it's actually everywhere, right? It's just like our breath, right? Nobody comes and says, oh, listen, I'm going to teach you how to breathe. You already know how to breathe. Your body does it for you all the time. You don't even have to think about it, right? Creativity is the same way. It's right there. It's always there. You just have to acknowledge it. You have to tap into it. And then, you'll also sometimes hear the term arts and health. And I think the in is really important because it acknowledges that it's already there. We're not bringing this extra, right? It's not like, oh, if the arts and health people aren't here, nobody's creative. Thank God they're here. So, it's been very exciting. There's lots of potential. I think for people who have been in uniform, they know that there are also a lot of like barriers and resistance to these things. But we are determined. And I have to say, Edie, also thank you again, because I'm always thinking about all of these different dimensions of arts and health. And I'd never really specifically thought about like GI health and toilet paper dispensers. So I now get one more thing to add to my mental collection. Thank you.
So I forgot to disclaim, but I have to disclaim that any views that I respond today are my own. They're not official policy of the Department of Defense or the U.S. government. All right, so yeah, as a clinician, I'm really clear on the difference between the terms therapy and therapeutic, and I see this spectrum really well in my own resume. And before coming to Walter Reed, I worked as a dance movement therapist at Dominion Hospital. It's in Falls Church here, complex psychological trauma program, both with inpatients and outpatients. And as a dance movement therapist, my role was to use the arts to assess and diagnose and set goals with my patients and to treat and process experiences through arts-based interventions. And dance movement therapy, like all creative arts therapies, including like art therapy, music therapy, drama therapy, poetry therapy, it's no different than traditional counseling or psychopathology or psychotherapy, except that the primary form of expression is through creative expression. It's nonverbal rather than talking. So if we were to ask this question to about talk therapy, for example, what's the difference between talk therapy and therapeutic talking? We should be able to really clearly list the differences, hopefully. If we were to consider that it's very important to respect the roles and the differences and the boundaries, right? The same way my therapist shouldn't be my best friend or my girlfriend, I also shouldn't use my girlfriend as my therapist. And it's the same with the creative arts therapies versus therapeutic art. So, making and spending time in a really cathartic art making process with a group of friends is different than medical treatment. They're just different things. But regardless of that, now at Walter Reed, I use the arts to create opportunities that are therapeutic in community settings. So that could be, the art installations on the walls, or hearing live music when you're going to get a procedure done, or free classes like writing for well-being, or using improv for team building in the medical center. And I really respect the value of this spectrum. Neither of these aspects, the therapy or the therapeutic, are more valuable than the other. And I really believe that engaging in the arts therapeutically is a cornerstone for collective and individual well-being. And it's also something that's accessible to everyone. At Walter Reed, we have about 12 creative arts therapists who are clinicians. And not all of the patients, how many patients are there? Thousands of patients. Not all of the patients have access to that experience to work with a creative arts therapist, but everybody has access, including the staff, including volunteers, including patients' families. Everyone has access to use the arts therapeutically. And so it's so important that we support that, because it is like our creative well-being to find balance and expression. So yeah.
Thank you, Sarah, for that. And Annette, I'm going to turn to you next. And so we've heard about arts and health, creative arts therapies. And Annette, you have a background with the Smith Center that I think worked with Walter Reed, or works with Walter Reed. So you know that arts and health program, as well as all your educational background and interaction with students as a professional artist, and also with the families of the fallen, when you worked on that, as well as now UnitingUS most recently. Can you give us some perspective as being a lifelong devotion to the arts? on the concept of the medical side, the community side, and individual side, and how we can blend it together.
I'd like to thank you, Anne Marie. I'd like to start by saying art is my drug of choice. And it's a fact, chemically, serotonin is released when not only you're making art, but when you're looking at art. I've worked with Arts for the Aged, which works with Alzheimer's patients, and they take them to museums. They make art with them, but they take them to museums. And people who are unable to speak can start singing in front of a painting. I mean, art has tremendous effects on people. There's also, I don't know if you know about city dance, which, can you all hear me? Okay. City Dance is another one of these great nonprofits in Washington that really rescue it trains. It's dance classes for children, Black and brown skin, and it gives them a sense of self-confidence and but as they're working with dancing, but they teach them academic skills, mentoring. So, but this is all built around the arts. And Smith Center for Healing in the Arts works primarily with cancer patients, but on all different levels. And really, the idea is maybe art can't cure, but art can heal. And there's an important difference because no matter how much time, and none of us know how much time we have, but you can live as fully as possible if art is part of your life. And I would say really art is my life. I mean, it's the way I set the table. It's the way, yeah.
About me.
Yeah, but look at, you are a work of art. This is the most gorgeous woman in here.
He says, I know you're trying to make it look pretty on the plate, but I want to eat. So you just bring the food.
I cook the same way I paint. It's mixing color and texture and form. And then I arrange it on a plate as attractively as possible. Well, that's making art, right? So art can, and did I quote Joseph Beuys? Joseph Beuys, a really transformative German-American performance artist who worked in this country post-war in the 60s and 70s, said, everybody is an artist. And I truly believe that. Some people just might need a little encouragement. Maybe your kids egged you on one way or another, but look at you, you're an author now. It's really how you live your life. Faces of the Fallen taught me that art is a very powerful tool that can accomplish what may be impossible otherwise. It can bring people together, and it's creating community that that empowers individuals. And that's what I saw happen. It wasn't just the families of the fallen who found each other and could come together in their their grief, but it was also the 250 artists who painted, sculpted, created the 1,300 portraits we showed here at the memorial. They found such power in affecting other people's lives that some of these artists, and most of them were professional artists, they had never felt before. They had never felt that the art they made really made a difference. And I think that's what I'm here to talk about.
Go ahead.
I don't want a question.
Okay.
I'm winging it. I'm like, so I've been trying to think pretty deeply about this connection, and I'm kind of riffing off of Annette here. I've been trying to think real deeply about this connection, and I'm kind of an amateur history nerd. So I read a little bit of a lot of different things, and something that I find very compelling is evolutionary psychology, which is how did the process of our evolving as humans, what connection does that have to our brains and our behaviors? And has everybody seen pictures of the cave paintings? There's paintings in caves in France. Actually, they're all over the world. We keep discovering more and more. And some of them are simple depictions, and some of them are these fantastically beautiful interpretive pieces of animals in movement and with depth. And these are drawings made with ochre and probably charcoal from the fire, and they're 40 to 60,000 years old. So that's, other than bones, the first record we have of humanity and culture is paintings, drawings, depictions, art. So I thought that in itself is pretty momentous in terms of the influence of art on us as human beings who have evolved. And then I thought, well, what about this veteran connection part? So as primal as the drive to depict art on a cave is in human beings, and I would argue masculine human beings, is competition, hierarchy. And that's where warfare comes from, is evolutionarily, I am defending what is around me. Whereas women, evolutionarily speaking, tend to function in community and build community. And so those things all kind of come together with veterans producing art. This primal drive to depict, this primal drive to compete, and this primal drive to have community. And I am no expert on the therapy of it, but I can say that when I am focused, when the material is talking to me, or when I am creating a piece, what I am creating is really a poem. It's a snapshot of a feeling, or a snapshot of an idea, or a snapshot of something I experienced that I'm trying to communicate with you. And all of those things are a biography, right? I'm trying to tell a story. So I'm painting a portrait for others to see. Just as a thinking person, that's where I'm coming from and what the art does for me.
Thank you. Okay, so I'm going to make a note and I'm going to get it right. And if I don't, please yell out the right name. Louis, not Alex, I'm just calling you by your middle name. And Matthew, not Michael. So I just have to say, there's a reason why on my file it says TBI, and names are part of that issue. But Lewis, what I want to have you talk about for just a minute. So Lewis is from Fredericksburg area, and we got a sponsor that actually helped him get started on the book signing process with us today. How does that make you feel that your community was, when they became aware that they were willing to support you, and then to be somewhere like at the Arlington National Cemetery Women's Memorial? What does that do for you?
After hearing about the news that someone actually reached out to help, it was amazing to me, blown away. Like you try to do these things on your own and not knowing that someone who doesn't know you, who actually has been in the military, was like, like the gift of giving. It was just amazing. I'm still blown away by it. But all in all, I think it's a great tool. I mean, it was great.
So Lewis's first question to me was, can I have the name of the donor and his address, because I want to make sure to write him a thank you note right away. And I just want to say that because with Uniting Us, what we've learned is whether it's creative arts therapy, arts in health, or therapeutic community art, or individuals, what we've learned is the gratitude and respect that we have gained for each other in this community that we've been able to create. I look at the stage and I go, wow, 5 amazing people. And I look out here and I go, even more amazing people. So how do we next time, this is June 26th, July 24th is our next opportunity to have a discussion like this. And how do we make that better? How do we help more people come to the discussion, build a community around trying to understand, sharing, creativity? And I'm here for the free food, which I found out there is none. But we actually have some other artists in the back, actually out in the area that are going to be doing demonstrations. Cynthia Scott is doing watercolor painting. Edie's going to be doing some of her beautiful hand inlaid jewelry, and should definitely take a look at that. Lewis is going to sell you and sign a book for you if that's something that you're interested in doing. And you better leave me a t-shirt. That's all I got to say. Allstate, that's right. We got you covered. We're friends, and everyone's friends and family like USAA. I think someone has said that about Uniting Us. So we're so happy that you joined us today, and thank you to the Women's Memorial for this great opportunity to partner this summer and explore the arts, celebrate them, and build the community stronger and better and united. Thank you so much. And if you see my family around, Tiffany Colton, who's about 8 years old, and Mom, just be sure to tell them that I did okay today, even though I got the names incorrect a couple times. Thank you, everybody. I hope you enjoy the exhibit.